Hey, are you ready to get your ASP.NET Boilerplate applications published up into the cloud? This is the episode for you. Hey, welcome to episode 31 of Code Hour. In this episode, I'm going to take an ASP.NET Boilerplate app and deploy it up into Azure as an Azure App Service, and that includes the database and the Angular app, which I'm going to compile and include in there. And this is modeled after a deployment that I've done. I've done two deployments now through to production. The first one used Kubernetes, and it uses Terraform with code as configuration, and it's self-healing, and it's massively scalable, and it scales up and down quickly, and it's self-healing. It's got all these wonderful benefits, but it's complicated, really complicated. It took a lot of work to build, and it's going to take a lot of work to maintain for somebody, and that's great if that's what you need. But if what you really need is simplicity and quick and easy way of deploying something, then this technique that I'm going to show you in this episode is going to be perfect for you. So let's get into it. I could potentially do all this through the Azure portal, right? I love this Azure portal. It makes life so easy just to go in and be like, hey, I want a new SQL database, and you create it, and it's got this wonderful GUI, and that's great if you're fiddling around, but I feel like if there's even a possibility that you might need to do this in a development environment, and then again in a test environment, and then again in a prod environment and a pre-prod environment, if you've got multiple environments that you're going to ever have to deal with, or even if you're on one project and you might move to another project and you want to borrow some of the assets, it is so much more convenient to write things as a script. And so that's what I'm going to do in this episode. So then there's the question of, once you got it in a script, if you write it in such a way that you just say create new database and create new app service, what happens if you run that script a second time? It's going to try and create the database again, right? So that's not good. So what you could do is you could parameterize it. You could say, oh, if the database exists, then skip this step. And if it doesn't exist, now you're doing that for every single resource, and that's turning into kind of a pain in the butt. And then what happens if you want to change just like one property off of something? You want to change the SKU of your database, and you would like to deploy that through to all of your environments? Man, now we're getting into something a lot more complicated, and that is exactly what Terraform is for. And Terraform is a wonderful product where you just describe the desired state for all of your resources in Azure or in any cloud service, and then it will go out, figure out what the actual state looks like, and make what your desired state is into the actual state. It's wonderful. It's also just probably a little bit too complicated for this episode. I'm going to try and get this all done in 30 minutes, so I'm going to show you the quick and easy way of doing it just in PowerShell scripts, which is going to be cross-platform. As my regular listeners know, that I absolutely love Cake, and I'm really tempted to write this all in Cake, but I'm gonna just throw it out there quickly because we're going for quick and dirty, just getting it out there. Not quite as bad as going to the GUI, but we're going to do it in scripts. Okay, enough talking. If that sounds good, I'm going to go ahead and get going. So I've got the site that I built in episode 19 a long time ago, and it just has one customized table in it. It's got a products table, and otherwise it is a out-of-the-box ASP.NET Boilerplate site, which means it's got an Angular app and it's got an ASP.NET Core app. And we need to get the database. First thing is we probably need to create a database. So let's create a new folder here called scripts. And I've created a new PowerShell script in here called create environment. And the thing that I'm really tempted to do here is to use the Azure CLI. So that's a dependency here. It's the only dependency that I'm going to have. And so just to make sure that we've got that, I'm going to do az ---- help. And if you need to install the Azure command line tools, then go search Google or Bing with Google, or Google with Bing for how to get that. So this is everything you can do from the command line. So the first thing we probably need to do is create a resource group. Resource groups, if you're not familiar with Azure, are just sort of like namespaces. They're ways of holding things. And if you ever need to delete an environment, then it would be really convenient if all of the resources in that environment all shared the same grouping, and so that would be the resource group. The help here is pretty good. I jump in here and use the help with the minus help all the time. So this is the AZ group create is going to need a location. Let's try that. And if you hit F8 while you're in a PowerShell script, you can just execute the lines individually, which is what I'll be doing. So okay, yeah, that was a little bug there. It looks like I had to reinstall PowerShell. All right, fine. So F8 to create the variable resource group, and F8 to create the location. Let's see if we can create this resource group from the Azure command line. F8 on the AZ group create. Yes, I do have to AZ login. So AZ login, and then that will, if I just do this without any parameters, it'll do it in interactive mode, which is fine for me. It's not going to work if you try to run this on the server, but we can worry about that some other episode if you guys find this interesting. All right, AZ login is completed, and now let's try to create this group. Hey, it looks like it actually worked. All right, that actually worked. Excellent. And let's just double check by zipping on over here into the resource groups. Well, it's not here yet, but if I bet if I refresh, it'll pop up. Okay, so the next thing to do is we want to create a database server and then a database instance. Okay. I don't know if this will work. We'll give it a try. So I was setting a SQL name for it, and a username, and a password. Code Hour rocks, of course. Super secret password. Oh, wow. That appeared to actually... Oh, it's looking for line 2. All right. Thank goodness for post-editing. That took a long time. Now, let's create a new database instance in there. So that'll be like AZ... SQL server, no, DB create, I think. Yes, this looks good. Okay, we can follow one of these patterns here. Actually, we want a general purpose. I like serverless. They have like a serverless option here, which is really nice because when you create that type of database SKU, it will allow you to set autopause. And so if you don't use the database very frequently, then it will turn itself off and not stop billing you, which is great. It's great for test databases and dev databases, and maybe not so much for production databases, but that'll be fine. Okay, well, I don't. For some reason, I think my Azure was out of date because it didn't have a parameter for. It didn't have an option in the AZ SQL DB create for specifying serverless. So I upgraded Azure, the Azure CLI version, and hopefully there'll be an option here. There we go. Compute model. Okay, it wasn't there last time, but it is now. Yay! Let's do. My compute model is serverless. Okay, let's see. Does this look good? We're going to do create. We got the resource group. We got the name is going to be least_db. The name of the database will be least_db. The name of the SQL server is least_SQL, and then the -e is general purpose Gen4 compute. Whatever. Okay, let's try it. F8. Go. Uh-oh, that didn't look good. Okay, here we go. That's looking good. All right, got all the parameters right. And while we're running that, let's just log back into Azure and see if we got, well, first of all, did we get a new resource group? Yes, we did. Least_store, excellent. And did we get a new SQL server? We did, least_DB. That's nice to see. Excellent. And I bet if we go into databases, it'll say no databases found because this is still in the process of executing. Cool, it executed. We have a database. So I think I forgot to tell you in the beginning, but there is going to be 5 different sections of this episode. First is creating the database. Second is deploying the database. Third is creating the Azure app service. Fourth will be deploying the host app to the app service. And fifth will be deploying the Angular app to the Azure App Service. So that's 5 different sections. We just completed the first one. And now that we've created the database, it is time to deploy the database. So the way to do this, it's really tempting just to be like, I want to .NET EF upgrade or whatever, and that's how you do things in dev. But when you're doing things in production, it's much better if you can use the tools that ASP.NET Boilerplate gave us, and one of those, there it is, okay, is the Restore Migrator. And the Migrator project is a command line app that was specifically designed to run migrations, and it can run them against a single database, or if you're in the multi-tenancy world, and I did an episode on that a little while ago, the multi-tenancy world, then you can execute in a mode where you've got multiple database instances, one for each tenant, or maybe one for some tenants and some shared for another tenant. And in that world, you need to be able to run your database migrations against multiple databases. And so the Migrator project will help you do that, which is really nice. Also, it has the benefit that you can compile it down and have that be an asset. And if you've got a multi-stage DevOps pipeline, then you can take that, publish it as an asset, and then when you deploy to the dev environment, go run that asset. And when you deploy to the test environment, go run that asset. And you keep downloading it and running it for each stage in the multi-stage pipeline, which is really nice. It's not something you can easily do if you're doing things just from source, because then you'd have to publish all of your source, which isn't really the best way to do things. So that's why we're going to take this Migrator project here, and we're going to compile it. We need to compile that, and so this will be part of the deploy. So let's create a new script called deploy, and we'll try and see if we can get that database up and running in there. Okay, I think this would probably be good enough. We've got .NET Publish. We're saying we want to do this in the release configuration, and we're saying that, I did this in the wrong order. So this is the thing that we want to build, and that's the thing we want to build. And where we want to output the assets to is then the C dist migrator project. It goes anywhere. And then one more thing we can do, if we build it right now, it's going to build a whole bunch of files, and it'd be really nice if we could just build it as a single file, just a quick, easy couple extra command line options to do this. It's a .NET Core 3 something feature. All right, forgot to put a new line continuator on that. Let's try that again. It's gonna work now. All right, there we go. Okay, got all the parameters set. This should be building and publishing this into a brand new dist folder. Okay, all right, there we go. That took a little while to run. Oh, my machine's running really slow today. So this was going to put things in dist, and with any luck, look at that, we got a single file exe and a PDB to go with it. All we really need is that single file exe. Now we could publish that up to a multi-stage pipeline and then download it and run it. That'd be really cool. All we need to do to run this now then, I think, is just to say, I think we need to actually be in that directory. So okay, so we need to set the connection string, and the connection string, it'll read from the environment variable, and so we can set an environment variable in PowerShell like this, and I think app settings.json for the migrator. So yeah, we're trying to set this and this, and so when you've got nesting like that, you can just separate them with underscores, so it'll be like connection strings underscore underscore, and then we want to set that value default, and we can set that equal to the connection string, and I guess we can just set the connection string up here. Oh, I don't know, I think we just pull it from the Azure portal if that's ready by now. Hey, there it is. Excellent. Okay, so it's connecting to TCP. I don't know if you really need that. 1433, I think that's default. It's not really necessary. Initial catalog, fine. Persist, security info. Lee, okay, we do need to set this password. What do we set to? Lee store rocks or something? Code our rocks. Sure, whatever. Okay, so we've got the connection string. Set to that, and let's try and migrate this thing. Let's see what happens. Oh, it's complaining it doesn't have a log4net config file. So yeah, I guess that's a thing. We need to copy that copy that over. Okay, we've done that. Moved that. Oh, I didn't mean to move it. I meant to copy item. Yeah. Source control. Source control. Make sure I didn't mess anything up too badly. So, and I also updated the SQL Server Management Studio, and I'm going to try and connect to that database in here. Oh yeah, and when you do this, it has a firewall issue, so it's going to have to tell it to set the firewall. Okay, just to double check, we're here in the SQL Server Management Studio, and there are no databases. And so if we run this again, now that we've got that log4net config file, we've got that log4net config file, we can run the migrator. Whew, that looks good. It might have actually worked. Let's refresh our list of database tables. Yeah, all right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so now we've got a database. We've got a database filled up. We've migrated into it. Step 1. Step 2 complete. Step 3 will be to create the app service. Step 4 will be to deploy into the app service. So let's go back into our create environment script. And in here, we've created the database. Step next will be to create the app service. And there are 2 parts of that. First, you've got to create an app service plan, and then you've got to create the app service in the plan, which will do the thing. I'm going to set a free plan, and let's try to do this. Oh, that appeared to work. That's nice. Next up. All right, done. Okay, great. Let's see if this actually worked. I'm going to zip on over to the Azure CLI, and we're going to take a look at, are there any app services? Oh, here we go, app services. And there is. There's one called Store. That's great. And here's the URL. All right, that's great. That's great. We've got an app service. Well, now it doesn't look very impressive yet because we need to deploy into it, which is when everything's going to go terribly, right? So let's deploy. There it is. Okay, so yes, so .NET Publish, we said we're going to do it in the release configuration. The output directory was going to be a dist host, which I was just looking through over there, and that was the project that we were trying to build. I didn't have to actually specify the CS project. Okay, great. And so that was successful. So now we need to get that up onto the server, and one way to do that is you can use a variety of different ways, but I like the idea of zipping it up into one file and then publishing that zip file. So to do that, we can run, there's a PowerShell command line to do zipping. This took me a while. This was a bug that I spent a lot of time on when I was trying to figure all this stuff out. I did ./dist/host, and that would put all of that would, when you get into the archive, there would be a host folder and then all of the stuff. And every time I deploy it, I was like, oh, why isn't this working? I finally figured out that if you do ./dist/host/star, that will put everything in the host directory, including all the recursive stuff, into the root of the zip file, which is much better. That's what we want. Okay, that might have worked. Well, there it is. Looks like we've got a host.zip. Yeah, let's just see what happens. So there's a Azure command line tool to upload zip files into an Azure app service. So that's what I'll use here. Okay, so there we go. That should be using Kudu and zip and web app deployment source config zip, and we've got the name, we've got a resource group. I don't think we need resource IDs, but we did specify a source. Whoa, okay, that worked, and it worked relatively quickly. Let's see if it worked. I guarantee you it's not going to. It's going to fail miserably, but the question is, how will it fail? All right, well, it looks like it's going to time out. So the one thing that we can do to sort of figure out what's going on, and this is a deployment technique. Actually, oh, there we go, internal server error. Oh, actually, it gave us the information that we needed. SQL could not connect to SQL Server. Okay, that's awesome. Another thing that you can do, and I'm probably going to need to do this at some point, is I love this feature. You can go into the... Oh, here we go. You can go into the console, and I guarantee I'm going to need to do this at some point. And I'm sorry the font's so small. I've got to zoom in post-editing. So, yeah, let's see. We ought to be able to say ls and see, yeah, see, there's all of our stuff that we just uploaded. So that's cool. And if I go to app data logs, then I can cat logs, and boom, we can see that error that we just saw, but we can actually, this is how you get much more detail, and this is a great debugging technique. I love this, really handy. So awesome, that's that. So the problem is, of course, we didn't specify a connection string, so it's trying to connect to the local host. That's no good, that's definitely not going to work, so we need to set that. And so you can set environment variables inside of an Azure app service with a command, and maybe we should do this before we deploy. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Let's just see. So we're going to say az cool, and we've got a nice little example right there. So we're going to set -g. We need to bring that connection string on in. Oh no, we already have the connection string. Yeah, actually we already have the connection string in this file. So all we need to do is say that it's going to be real similar to this command where connection string underscore default equals connection string. I think that ought to do it. Let's try this. Oh, that looks good. I mean, the value's right? And hopefully it knows to refresh, restart the app. I might need to manually restart it if not. Oh, this is great. Okay, we're making some great progress here. It is actually trying to connect to Leastore SQL, and it just says the client IP address is not allowed to access the server. Okay, so we can fix this. We can fix the firewall rules. We could specify this IP address manually. That's one way to do it. Or we could just say, hey, all Azure access, anything inside of Azure can access this, which would be a firewall rule that we can create when we're creating the environment. So after we created the database, we could have set firewall rule. Oh, here we go. They've even got a perfect example of it right here. Oh, that's a good sign. That did something. I bet we just need to restart the database. Restart the Azure instance. Oh, yay! Okay, this is good, this is good. I guess I just needed to restart the thing, and oh, another error, of course. What's this one? Failed to fetch the swagger.json, possible mixed content issue. The page was loaded over HTTPS, but HTTP URL was specified. Okay, so this is a problem with the, there's more app settings that we need to set. So app settings.json in the host. If we take a look inside this, we'll see there's the connection strings, we set that, but there's also these. So the app server, and this is an ASP.NET Boilerplate specific thing. So the server root address, the client root address, and the core's origins. We should really set all three of those to the actual settings for them, not localhost. And it's specifically complaining about the HTTP, not the HTTPS, but even if we fix that, it would complain about the localhost next. So to do that, we're going to have to okay, let's try this. So this should set the app service root address, client root address, and core's origins all to be equal to the Leastore web, Azure websites.net or whatever. And we can create a custom domain at some point, but let's just stick with what they give us for now, keep things simple. And I bet you if I refresh this, it's not going to work. I have to restart the app again, but maybe we'll get lucky. It's worth a try. Wow! Okay. That's really cool. That actually worked. Let's see if we can connect to the database. We can try to log in as admin and 123 QWE, I think. Is that right? Ooh, that worked. Cool. Can we try to get all products? There probably aren't any, but we can try it. So skip 0, give us 10. 200 response body. There weren't any. Yeah, all right. We're connecting to the database from Swagger. So that completes the second to last step of deploying an ASP.NET Boilerplate site. Now we actually have to get the Angular site up and out there. So we've got to do that in 2 steps. First, we've got to build the Angular site itself, and that is as simple as ng build minus prod minus AOT, and I think we need to do that from inside of the Angular directory, if I recall. That'll be good. And then once we've done that, then we're going to take the results of all that. Oh, this is going to take a little while. Let's just run it. Yeah, so this will actually put it all into a local dist folder or something like that. I think it'll just be in like /angular/dist, and that will be basically everything in Angular all compiled down, minified, and ready to go in production. And then we can take that and pop it into the www root directory of the host project. We'll recompile the host project, and then we'll push that host project back up to Azure App Services and see what happens. And something's going to fail, and I'll be excited to see what's going to be it. Okay, that always takes a long time. So hopefully we now have something in the Angular directory up here called dist. Yep, there it is, dist. And we've got a bunch of stuff in it. And the most important one here is the one called, there should be an index.html. Yep, there it is. Okay. And there it is. Yeah, that should look familiar. Hey, it looks like store. Okay, perfect. So we're going to try and copy that, or maybe move. All right, so we're just going to plunk that whole thing right into the www root directory. And now the question is, if I were to just, I ought to be able to just run that right now, right? I ought to be able to run Visual Studio and see if it works. We should probably set these app values. This would be 21021, and this would be 21021. And if I hit, oh, bummer, that didn't work. And it was because it was trying to redirect to the Swagger index.html. And I can tell you why that is. It's this line right here. So in the start.cs, it says use static files, which means take a look inside of our www root folder and serve anything that you see, but it doesn't specifically say look for anything that's an index.html file and serve that. And so if we were to change this from use static files, oh, there we go, use file server, and use file server will enable all static file middleware for the current request path in the current directory. I'm going to control F5 this time, make it a little faster. Start without debugging. That's good. Yay! All right, great, fantastic. So if we log in, I should be able to actually, Oh, this happens. I've seen this happen. The anti-forgery token is missing, is what it's saying over here. If I look in the server-side error messages, and I think we can clean that up by just going to clearing out the cookies and doing a hard refresh. All right, yeah, all right, that's great. It's working locally. That's fantastic. So now for the next step, we need to, let's just publish this up. Let's see if we can get this to work up on the server. So now we need to recompile. So we'll go back over to our deploy scripts. We're going to rebuild this with .NET build. I've seen this error before. This is just, sometimes PowerShell gets crazy and wild. And you have to just close and restart it. It's crazy. It's wild. All right, I don't think we need to set that again. Woo. Okay, done. And is this gonna work? Big money. Big money. Come on. This is already what I like to see. This is great. It is pulled up the Angular URL, and so that's awfully nice to see. And if we zip over to this network tab, we'll see, yeah, this is doing all the things that it should do. An error has occurred. That's as to be expected, because nothing ever goes right. Actually, I think I know what this problem is. This is saying it went to go to localhost get all. It went to try and connect to localhost. Now, why did it try and do that? The answer is here in this one right here, in appconfig.production.json. This is a file that lives in Angular that tells Angular where to go get its data. And when it made a request over there, the response said, my remote service base URL is there and my app base URL is there, and both of those are wrong. Those values should have been set to leastore.azurewebsites.net. So there's two ways to fix this. The really quick and easy way would be just to overwrite and maybe do a search and replace on those values in that file and send it up. One thing that's another kind of cooler way to do that's a little bit cleaner, I think, is to create some middleware. So we're going to create some middleware that lives inside of ASP.NET Core, and anytime it receives a request for appconfig.production.json, it will respond with our custom data, which is just going to pull directly out of its app settings file, or in the case of when it's running on the server, it's going to be pulling it out of environment variables. So let's write that. Okay. Whew, that took a long time to write. I think this is correct. So you use the middleware builder over here, and this is going to say, let's pull out, this is using dependency injection to get a configuration root. In the configuration root, we're saying pull out the server root address and the client root address. Actually, we don't even need this client root address. And then I'm going to please use middleware, the app config middleware, like that. And the app config middleware goes in here. In the constructor, it's now got a server root address. We don't need this client root address. We weren't using it. And then the invoke async method here is saying whenever we arrive at this point, whenever a request comes through, it hits the invoke async, passes in a context and the next thing in the pipeline. So then we're going to say, hey, is somebody asking for the appconfig.production.json? And if yes, then we're going to context.response.writeAsync, and we're going to write the string remote base URL, app base URL, and then we're done. We're not going to process anything else. On the other hand, for all the other requests in the entire universe, just go ahead and continue the pipeline on. Continue moving along on the pipeline, do whatever you would normally do. And so that should be all that's necessary. I'm going to hit F5 and see if this actually works locally. I would expect it to. Okay, all right, I got this. I know the problem now. That was a lot of work. The problem is that this needs to live right above the use file server. The problem is that use file server was handling that request, and that was then immediately bypassing everything subsequent in the pipeline. So order of events matters very much. Man, this is going to work now. You wait and see. Yes. Okay. Yay. Oh my gosh, that. All right. Oh, okay. Got that middleware component working. That's really nice. And so the last thing is, you'll notice there's just before I publish this up, I'm ready to publish it up to Azure App Service and call it a day. But there's one more subtle bug that's kind of annoying me. And that is, if I'm here and I hit the refresh button right now, boom, nothing happened. Why did that fail? That failed because this request to /app/home, it doesn't know what to do with that request. What the server side should be doing is taking almost all requests that go to /app/anything and redirect them back to index.html. Fortunately, that's super easy to do with another middleware component, a much simpler middleware component this time, I swear. Okay, so this is a fun little one. So this is saying whenever a request comes in, process it. And so we can go to the next thing in the pipeline. We're going to try to run everything. Now, if the final result of that was a 404, and by the way, if it started with /app, and it had no extension, we weren't like trying to get to /app/thing.html, then what I want you to do is take that request path and update it to index.html, and then continue processing the pipeline request. So if this works, then we should just about be done. I'm going to hit F5. Good so far. And if I hit refresh, yes. Okay, great. So now we just need to get this thing published up to the server. So I'm going to run my deploy scripts again, and hopefully everything is just going to work on the server. Chances of this being good, I'd say probably about 0, right? I mean, has anything worked yet to date? Actually, I don't want to run the full deploy script because I don't want to run Angular. Okay, this is all just going to work. .202, good. Deployed, theoretically. Yes, nice. Okay, awesome. And I bet we can go over here, product. All right, fantastic. That is, last thing, refresh. Yes. All right, this is fantastic. We have deployed an app. Normally, it's pretty hard to take a SPA and get all the bits and pieces deployed, but we did this pretty quickly. I ran into a lot of problems. Hopefully you won't have to, especially if you follow the blog post that corresponds with this. That's on leerichardson.com, so check that out. And then also there's the GitHub site that has all of the code that I just showed. So check those out, those resources. Hopefully this will be helpful to you. If you're ready to do a quick and dirty deploy to Azure App Services, then hopefully this will get you there quickly. So I hope you learned something. Please like, subscribe, and all that, and I look forward to talking to you again next time.